I certainly hope you had a great Easter and a happy Passover. 1 week left for me in sunny California, then I'm back to the Beltway to deal with the demons back there in person. I want to begin today with my Washington Post column from Saturday after I went off the air on Thursday, and Friday was a pre-tape show. I hope you enjoyed Archbishop Chaput and Larry Arnn. Great Good Friday show. I didn't write anything on Good Friday. I don't do that, and I don't work on Easter Sunday. But on Saturday, I was able to respond in the Washington Post to a decision by Major League Baseball, Delta Airlines, and Coca-Cola to boycott Atlanta because duly elected Georgia legislators changed their voting law in many ways. So I wrote a column, and I'd like you to hear it. The title, Good Luck with Your Fans, Major League Baseball. By moving the Major League Baseball All-Star Game from Atlanta, where it was scheduled to be played this summer, Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred has, in the opinion of many Republicans, declared the league an arm of the Democratic Party and baseball itself to be a blue sport, with values opposed to the Constitution and representative government. No doubt Manfred will insist he didn't mean that, but Republicans know the insult of the accusation of racism when it hits them. Major League Baseball wants to be a Democratic Party interest group? Fine. Republicans should oblige them. I will. And the same applies to Delta, the non-official but very real airline of the Democratic Party, and Coca-Cola, the non-official but very real drink of the Democratic Party. Good luck with your fans and your customers. Maybe they won't notice. None of the leaders of these organizations appear to have done anything other than listen to agitprop from the left that was designed to secure political points free of the law's actual provisions. It seems none of those involved in this week's virtue signaling, Manfred, Delta Chief Executive Ed Bastian, Coca-Cola Chief Executive James Quincy, engaged anyone with comprehensive knowledge of the bill. A comprehensive review of the new bill was undertaken by Georgia Public Broadcasting, not exactly a segregationist stronghold. The bill expands early voting access for most counties, adds an additional mandatory Saturday for voting, and formally codifies Sunday voting hours as optional. Quote, secure absentee ballot drop boxes, which did not exist a year ago, are now officially part of state law, but not without some new changes, reports Georgia Public Broadcasting. Changes to absentee voting requiring ID were indeed made, and these sorts of revisions are needed, given the problems that plagued voting in America last year. New York's troubles counting votes, the incredibly close House race in Iowa that Democrats were trying to overturn until a few days ago, and so on, as well as the deluge of false claims about fraud and the real fears of foreign interference. The best security, and thus the best assurance for everyone that voting is free of fraud, is robust voting ID requirements. Neither I nor millions of Americans favoring voting security think significant fraud was proven in Georgia. But we do believe in requiring identification to vote to prevent fraud in the future, and in acting to guarantee integrity in voting. Just as Major League Baseball asks all fans at ball games for ID before they buy beer, or Delta asks all passengers for ID before they board airplanes. The three musketeers of virtue signal. Again, the commissioner of baseball, the CEO of Delta, and the CEO of Coke. The three musketeers of virtue signaling likely heard President Biden describing the new Georgia law as, quote, Jim Crow on steroids, and falsely claiming that the law, quote, ends voting hours early. But they must have missed that the president's words were ridiculed far and wide. The Washington Post fact-checker blog slapped its worst standard rating, 4 Pinocchios, on the president's claim. Yet, it's running over the interest of their customers, yet in running over the interest of its customers and buyers, the commissioner and CEOs didn't stop to study, ponder, and consult. They wanted to be seen as doing the right thing. As for Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock, who previously called the new law public policy based on a lie, he now faces a political nightmare, 18 months before he has to defend his new job at the polls. Warnock issued a mushy statement, regretting that Major League Baseball had yanked the game and pleading that other businesses not boycott the state. Too late, Senator. You could have stopped this earlier, but you chose not to. You chose, just like the president, Major League Baseball, Coke, and Delta did, to slander millions of Americans as racist and pummel your own state in the process. Good luck defending that in 2022. Quote, "This was neither our decision nor our recommendation, and we are saddened that the fans will not be able to see this event in our city," the Atlanta Braves said in a statement. Unfortunately, businesses, employees, and fans in Georgia are the victims of this decision. That was from the Braves. The Braves know. Tens of millions of Americans know. Will these CEOs put their shareholders first and apologize? Will Manfred put the fans first and reverse his terrible decision? That would take courage, so don't bet on it. Open up the phones, please. 1-800-520-1234. I'm out of spending money on baseball. Not going to do it. I don't think I've missed a season since I was 5 going to a few games. Sometimes I've had to go to Angels Stadium to see the Indians, sometimes Baltimore Stadium to see the Indians. Sometimes I go home and see the Indians. Not this year. Not going to spend a dime on baseball or new merch. Not a dime. If they're going to try and bully America into a nonsense narrative about that voting law, the voting law is a complicated piece of legislation, 98 pages long. Nips and tucks all over the place, compromises here and there. It's about voting security. It is a more liberal law than New York City and New York State in the amount of early voting it allows. Major League Baseball is headquartered in New York State. So I ask you, are you going to spend money on baseball? Now, you might have to fly Delta. They might be the only airplane going, but don't fly Delta unless you have to, and don't have to drink Coke or any Coke product. You don't have to. If they think you're a racist, why would you? Atlanta, I'm sorry that they took your baseball game and that they insulted you. But your state house passed a law according to constitutional norms, and corporate America is virtue signaling at your expense. Here's what Brian Kemp, the governor of the state, said after Major League Baseball announced its boycott of Atlanta.
Well, certainly everybody wants to bake in to the people of our state and everyone around the country that that's what's going on here. And, I'll let the legislators speak for themselves, but I know myself, our team, a lot of the legislators we were working on. And listen, I realize people have all kinds of different of opinions and beliefs about the 2020 election. But make no mistake, there were issues that happened on the election, like they do in every election. This year, obviously, there was more of a spotlight than ever, and I think one of the reasons was the pandemic, and it changed a lot of things. We had a brand new system in Georgia. We had things like drop boxes that we've never used, at least in recent memory. Therefore, there were mechanical issues that needed to be fixed. There were reasons to try to figure out a better way, a more accessible way, and a more secure way for us to hold elections. And there's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't apologize for wanting to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat.
Good for Brian Kemp. Tim in Atlanta. What do you think, Tim? Hello, Tim. Go ahead, Tim. I guess Tim is on a cell phone and probably not getting a good connection. Or you guys have messed up the board. It is Monday. It can be a little bit foggy. Don't go anywhere, Tim. We'll figure it out. Harley's on the board, so he's probably... There you are. Hey, Tim, well, I guess not. We'll come back to you, Tim, after the break. I think it's outrageous. And as I said, I have watched baseball, and I will continue to watch the Indians. I'll continue to root for. I'm just not going to spend any money on baseball. Not going to go to a game. Not going to fly Delta if I can help it. Not going to drink Coke. They want to call you racist. They want to call me racist. I saw on Twitter the 8-year Secretary of the Navy under Obama called me a racist because I believe in voting security. I believe in the Israeli system, actually, and I believed in voting for security for a long time. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Time for the Yinzer Report. Salena Zito is one of our most popular guests. She wrote The Great Revolt a few years ago. She writes for the Washington Examiner and the New York Post. If you want everything Salena Zito writes, you go to salenazito.com and register. Good morning, Salena. How are you?
Good morning, Sunshine. How are you?
Well, I am bummed with baseball, and I will not be buying any merchandise this year. I will not be going to any games. I'll watch the Indians. I'll continue to follow the Indians. But what do you think? You're a Pirates diehard. What do you think of the game canceling the All-Star game in Atlanta because of a stupid and erroneous assessment of the voter registration law?
Well, it's something I've been writing about and talking about for years. Is when our cultural curators, corporations, sports entities, the news media, academia, when they start to pressure people politically and they start to take a side, it is one of the number one reasons what started the conservative populist coalition that eventually placed Donald Trump into office. And so this decision by by Major League Baseball was awful. It was terrible. And I've been talking to people about it for the past couple of days, and people are just done. They're done. They're done with people taking a side. They just want to be entertained or they just want to watch a game. This goes for Hollywood as well. And, these are the kinds of things that grow this conservative populist coalition.
Yeah, I think it's bullying. And, people immediately jump on Twitter and say, oh, you're butthurt, you're whiny. And in fact, it's bullying. They say I'm engaged in cancel culture. No, I'm not. They canceled the game. And I am reacting to they're taking away the choice. If people are offended by Georgia's law and they don't want to go to Atlanta, that's their choice. But they are not giving you a choice. They're taking away that choice. And the thing that Manfred makes me so crazy about, he won't take any questions. And the reason is he's a dummy. He couldn't possibly defend this when, Christie goes out and says, New York, New Jersey, their laws are more restrictive than Georgia. And Stacey Abrams is in New Jersey and Major League Baseball is in New York City.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about where the headquarters of all these larger entities are located, like the NFL, like Major League Baseball. It's in Manhattan, and it's like we wrote in the book, the people that make these decisions live in these super zip codes who have no connection whatsoever with the people who either consume their goods or put their butts in their seats.
And I'm sure that I'm sure there are some players who didn't like the Georgia law, and if they had been selected to the All-Star team, they didn't have to play. But they took away the choice. Right. They screwed all these people in Atlanta, too. Honest to goodness, there are people in Atlanta who banked everything on the All-Star game. They did a pop-up store or they expanded their restaurant. It's a big deal. It's a 4-day event. It's like taking away the Super Bowl, and they just screwed them on bad information, on Joe Biden saying it's Jim Crow. That's very insulting, by the way, to the people who actually lived through Jim Crow.
That's incredibly insulting. Look, there are vendors, there are caterers, there are the guys and gals that are out there selling those hats and their buttons. This is their Christmas, and they took their Christmas away. This is where they were going to make the most money they were going to make in their small business for the year, and they took that away. And I would argue that this kind of behavior by corporations is anti-democratic.
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
What it does is it it now forces state legislative chambers to question everything they're going to vote on because are they going to be afraid it's going to hurt the people in their state, the small businesses in their state, the medium-sized businesses in their state, the mom and pop stores, and that is un-American to do that.
You know what? Delta is a Democratic Party operative now. So is Coca-Cola, and others will be tempted to follow. And state legislatures have to step up and not be bullied. They cannot be coerced. This is corporatist. This is an aristocracy. This is a woke elite forcing America to do what they want because they're Democrats. And I honestly think there's political capital to be made here by legislators who stand up like Brian Kemp said, and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not going to be woke shuck by these people. I'm not afraid of them. I don't care. They cannot make me spend money on Major League Baseball, fly Delta, or drink Coke. They can't make me do it.
You know, and they're absolutely correct. Look, if you look at the back of the book of The Great Revolt, there is a poll that was done on people after the 2016 election. And the border was a big problem ahead of that election. Yet that became number 4 in people's minds. But this kind of disconnect between our cultural curators and ourselves was ranked up as number 1.
Number one.
Number 1. And it's going to be the same for 2022. And it's going to be the same for these off-year elections in 2021.
SelenaZito.com, America. Stay tuned. Bonjour, hi, Canada, Hugh Hewitt. On this, the first day that Major League Baseball is identified clearly as an arm of the Democratic Party, Delta, the official airline of the Democratic Party, and Coca-Cola, the official drink of the Democratic Party, I bring you a nonpartisan. Jake Sherman runs Punchbowl News, which is not affiliated with the Democratic Party like those other organizations. Good morning, Jake.
We're affiliated with the Jake Sherman Party and the Jake Sherman Party alone.
That's it. And I think that Major League Baseball has made a huge mistake. I am not buying a ticket this year, no merch, period. Lots of people agree with me on that. I don't think they read the Georgia law. And let me play for you Chris Christie, cut number 11 on ABC News yesterday.
It's just a symptom, George. It's a symptom of what's going on in our country right now. I mean, let's talk about what the Georgia law is really about, because we haven't had much of that. Drop boxes now become a permanent part of the Georgia landscape. They were not prior to COVID. They are now. Minimum of 17 days of early voting, including 2 Saturdays and 2 optional Sundays. You're going to have all voters being able to have multiple ways to prove who they are. Driver's license, last 4 numbers of your social security number, even a utility bill or a free ID provided by the state of Georgia. And voting is going to be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. as it is right now in Georgia. This is what we call.
So what is it a symptom of? It sounds like you're against them.
It's a symptom of this, George. And I hate to come in here this morning to say this, because I sat here and listened to the president's inaugural address. And I just want a couple of real quick points from it. Politics need not be a raging fire that destroys everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject a culture in which facts themselves are manipulated or made up. And Joe Biden's broken his own rule, 84 days. And now he's lying to the American people, George. He's lying about this bill. He's lying to the American people about it to cause the raging fire he said he was going to put out. I'm very disappointed.
Jake Sherman, that's strong stuff, but the president did lie. He got fact-checked by the Washington Post, calling this Jim Crow on steroids. It's outrageous, but I don't think the Beltway knows how ticked off people are.
I think I certainly know how ticked off people are about it. I'm well aware of it. I think a few things. I think, I do understand the bill. I have read the bill and read the coverage of it. I think what happened is, and I'm not taking a side here, I think what happened is that a couple provisions got a lot of attention, and it became too hot. And, of course, when the President of the United States goes on television and tells Major League Baseball to move their All-Star game, they have no choice at that point, really. I mean, they have a choice. That's not fair. But they are under tremendous amounts of pressure, so I think that's what happened here.
And Major League Baseball took the choice away from their fans. And Coca-Cola and Delta telegraphed that they will do what the Democratic Party tells them to do. I'm looking at a CNN story that has in it the subheadline, Texas could be next front in voter suppression laws. Voting security laws are not voter suppression laws. But if you take that headline, you're taking a stand. You're fixing the news. No, it's not you, Jake, but CNN is a participant in the news. And I actually think people have had it up to here with woke corporatism and being pushed around and being told they cannot do this or cannot do that, and that baseball's going to suffer and Delta's going to suffer and Coke's going to suffer. Chris Christie's coming on at the bottom of the hour. What is Raphael Warnock going to do? He just cost his state $100 million.
Yeah, but I would say, Hugh, that you call it woke corporatism, and I'm just going to play devil's advocate for a second. I mean, it is the free market working, right? I mean, if a company doesn't want to participate in whatever the activity of the state is, and then by the way, people like you and other voters and other people, other consumers will suggest that they're not going to participate in their commerce. You're not going to fly Delta, although there's not much option from California. I guess there is Los Angeles to DCA if you have to come to the East Coast on Delta, but you could switch to United or American, so you have your choice there. You could drink Pepsi. But I would say, I mean, and not speaking broadly, but not about this incident at all, just speaking broadly, I actually think it broadly speaking is how free markets and capitalism should work. And
now, disagreement here. Shareholder value should drive corporate decisions. Shareholder value. And Delta did not consult shareholders. Delta didn't do anything except react reflexively. And there's a Georgia Public Broadcast study on this bill that was, very long, very detailed. And there's a lot to like in it. But you know and I know what got the most attention is you can't give food and water to people in line. Jake, in your entire life of voting, have you ever needed food or water in line? That's designed to prevent people from electioneering in line, which has been illegal forever.
Yeah, and supporters of the bill have said that that provision is the same thing as not allowing electioneering within X number of feet of a polling place, which, and I've been to polling places all across this country, as you have too. That's illegal everywhere. But you're right. That provision did get a lot of attention and kind of carried the day.
So the media combined with woke leftists to sell a narrative, and then the president saying, and I mean, Jake, the president saying this is Jim Crow on steroids is deeply insulting to people who lived under Jim Crow. I mean, it is so not Jim Crow. And Jim Crow would be unconstitutional. If the bill was Jim Crow, it would be struck down by every court in the land in about 5 seconds. But he doesn't get called on it. And I think the media bias.
I think he has gotten called on it. I think there have been fact checks of what he has said. I think there's been, I think there's been ample coverage of what he said. But I hear you. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just think I disagree that there's been no coverage of it. I think there has been. And by the way, no matter what state they move this to, the All-Star game, someone's going to have a problem with some law on the books, right? I mean, no state is perfect in every single person's eyes, except Connecticut, my home state.
Why is New York the home of Major League Baseball? Their voting restrictions are much, much more numerous and obtrusive than those of Georgia. Right. And why do they go to work there? Because they're idiots. I think Rob Manfred is a moron. I really do. Just like Roger Goodell, they are puppets of the owners, and the owners need to talk to each other about what happened. Now I got to go to the Punchbowl News thing because this is big. Punchbowlnews.com, America, if you want Jake's morning bolt of news. I don't think this tax bill has a chance. I don't think people want. Do you know what stepped-up basis is, Jake?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Well, last week I asked a bunch of journalists, and many of them didn't know it. I've taken the time to ask people all weekend long. Those that know that it's on the chopping block are outraged, and those that don't know what it is get outraged when they find out what it is.
Yep.
I don't think this has a prayer.
Well, I would actually even take it a step. I mean, I have been, and I, maybe I'll tell you what the White House says, and Ron Klain, and he's the captain of the ship, and he's a smart guy. The White House believes that, forget the stepped up stuff for a second, just let's talk about the corporate rate. The corporate rate's at 21% thanks to the tax bill that Republicans did in 2017. That bill, the Democrats want to bring that back up to 28 from 21. I just tend to think, I mean, maybe I guess I'm wrong because there is really no opposition to this right now among Democrats. I just have to think that raising taxes on corporations in a soft economy is not politically popular, although every Democrat's behind it, so I'm clearly wrong. Democrats believe in the White House that soaking corporations is popular, and they are 100% firm on that. I'm surprised to the extent to which they are just full steam ahead on this.
Well, that wait until the counter argument begins, which is all that happens when you raise corporate taxes is you raise prices and you drive corporations overseas, and Apple begins to accumulate cash in Ireland again. That's what that was all about. It was repatriating cash that American corporations don't bring home because the tax rate's better in Ireland, and it will be the highest corporate tax rate in the world. So that argument hasn't begun yet. But I don't think they got 5 votes. They can only lose 5 votes in the House. And now it is true the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is flat on its back and ruined. It's the least effective organization in D.C. right now. So it's
certainly not reflective of Republicans in any way, shape, or form.
Right. It's completely gone off the rails, and so they can't protect themselves. But I expect businesses will organize through their respective affiliations to go and talk to legislators. Quick question, Jay. In terms of the Democratic agenda, the parliamentarian, as you noted, was supposed to rule on Friday about Chuck Schumer's power grab. When is that ruling going to come? Then what didn't happen because of the attack on the Capitol?
We expect it early this week. And we're talking about using the reconciliation, the fast-track budget process again for a second time on a single budget bill, which would be unprecedented and would change the Senate probably forever, because then people could just ask for a million options to pass. It's essentially blowing up the filibuster without blowing up the filibuster.
And do you expect that to pass?
I don't know. I mean, you clearly don't think so, right, Hugh?
No, I don't. I think the Senate parliamentarian is a real deal. She ruled the right way. They've disappointed Republicans before. I think the Senate parliamentarian makes senators change the law with the nuclear filibuster. They don't do it for them. For them. So I
tend to agree with you.
Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News. Go to punchbowlnews.com. Good to talk to you, Jake. Don't go to baseball. Don't fly Delta. Do not drink Coke. I'll be right back. They're all Democratic Party operatives. Coca-Cola, Delta, Major League Baseball. They're just Joe Biden buddies and Democratic operatives. Stay tuned, America. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Pleased to welcome back former New Jersey Governor Christie. Good morning, Governor. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. Doing well.
It's always good to have you on. Whenever I'm not on Meet the Press, I think you are the most effective Republican on TV anywhere, and you were doing that yesterday on George Stephanopoulos, and I wanted to follow up with you. I am outraged by Major League Baseball pulling the All-Star game, and I have in my hand, this breaks my heart. I don't know if you can see this, Governor, on YouTube. It's Frankie Linder on the cover of Sports Illustrated. This breaks my heart. I'm a hardcore Indians fan. I have never not gone to many Indian games this summer. I'm not spending a dime on Major League Baseball this year. Not a freaking dime. I will not be bullied by these people. What did you make of the decision of Rob Manfred, who might be a friend of yours, to pull the game based on an erroneous understanding of the Georgia law?
Well, like I said yesterday on Stephanopoulos, I think that, this is a symptom of what's going on across our country right now, Hugh, which is that, people are being forced for business reasons to conform to facts that are manufactured. And, so to me, the real blame, and I'm not trying to say that, whether Coke or Delta or Major League Baseball shouldn't have taken the time to read the bill and make their own decision. But, this comes down to the President of the United States being out there and saying things that are just absolutely outright false. And to call this law Jim Crow is just outrageous when you look at exactly what the law says. And that's what I think we need to focus on most particularly is what did Georgia do and what does it mean for voting? And that's the most important thing. And what's being done out there, mischaracterized by everybody from Joe Biden to Stacey Abrams to every other Democrat who has a soapbox, is just wrong.
Well, if it was Jim Crow, it would be unconstitutional, and rightly so. If they had passed a law that in any way was based upon an intent to harm people of any minority or on gender or on religion, it would be unconstitutional. It's a voting regulation, and I think it's necessary because I believe in voting ID. When did that become voting suppression, Governor Christie?
Yeah, I don't know, especially because in Joe Biden's own state of Delaware, as you know, They've required voter ID for as long as Joe Biden's been seeking office in that state. And, requiring a voter ID just makes sense. I mean, for goodness sake, Hugh, if you get on an airplane today, you have to show ID. If I go to get into an office building in New York City today, I have to show ID. Yet I don't have to show ID to execute electing people to power in this country. It just makes no sense. And by the way, as you know, what they did in the Georgia laws was to expand what people could use as ID. So even though 97% of the people who voted in Georgia have a driver's license, they also said that we'll give you a state ID card for free if you don't have a driver's license, or you can use a utility bill, or you can use the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. I mean, this is not onerous, and it certainly is not racist in any way.
So do you believe President Biden has knowledge that what he is saying is false when he says it?
Yes.
And so do you think he is doing so with the intent of increasing Democratic Party attachment in the African-American community?
Yes.
You see, go ahead.
I think he's dividing the country, Hugh, on purpose for his own political advantage right now. And it's sad to say it. I mean, I said this yesterday on TV that, I listened to the president's inaugural address. I sat there that day at ABC and listened to it. And I think it's important for people to hear these words, right? He says, politics need not be a raging fire destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war, and we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. Well, if that doesn't describe exactly what he has done, when you use the words Jim Crow to describe something like this, you're setting the raging fire. You're the arsonist.
That's absolutely right. And CNN today has a story that says Texas could be the next front in voter suppression laws. That's not a story. That's a piece of advocacy. It's not voting suppression. It is voting security and voting. I want the Israeli system. You have to go home and you have to throw 5 pieces of ID and you're not allowed to vote. There are no absentees. I want the Israeli system.
Well, and think about this. The hypocrisy also of Stacey Abrams in all this. She was celebrating last week here in New Jersey the new law that was signed that allows 9 days of early voting and saying it was one of the best laws in the country, when Georgia allows 17 days of early voting and up to 19 days if you use the 2 optional Sundays. I mean, are you kidding me? That's Jim Crow, but, New Jersey is all of a sudden the bastion of voting freedom. I mean, it's because there's a Democratic governor here. This is all about politics. That's all it's about. And you know it.
That's why I am saying I'm not going to a Major League Baseball game this summer. I'm not going to fly Delta unless I have to. I'm not going to drink Coca-Cola because they have become arms of the Democratic Party. Now, I don't know if Rob Manfred's a friend of yours. And
he is not. I know the commissioner, but I would not say he's a friend of mine. We've met.
Okay. It seems to me that the heads of those organizations all came up from the organizations, and they are all in insular environments. If they had called anybody, if they had done any kind of due diligence, if they'd read the Georgia Public Broadcasting analysis, hardly a bastion of segregationist thought in the United States, they would have realized it was a balanced law, nuanced, it had a tuck and a nip here. Instead, they just swallowed it whole cloth. Do they not have organizations in place to make sure they hear points of view?
I don't know. And I don't know what they did in terms of making these decisions. But what I'll say is this. It is a symptom of what we're seeing in this country right now, Hugh, that's very, very dangerous. And the President Biden, accused Donald Trump over and over again during the campaign and the transition of making things up, making up stories to divide the country. You and I both agreed at the time about, voter fraud in the election and whether there was evidence of voter fraud that would have changed the results of the election. And we were willing to be critical of the president when he was doing things that we both felt were out of line. But, Joe Biden is now doing the exact same thing he accused Donald Trump of doing. And when you have the president of the United States out there doing that, and at the same time, he was threatening to raise corporate taxes significantly on these folks, you know that there are people out there who are wondering what he'll do next if they were to disagree with him. That doesn't make it right, but it makes the president the arsonist.
It also makes every corporation a bully in terms of taking away choice from people. They hurt Atlanta businesses badly. I mean, they really did. Governor, is there any place left in America that is not either red or blue? Because, you do a great job on ABC. Whenever I show up on Meet the Press, I try and do that point of view. But it seems to me the networks have wholly given in to being blue. The newspapers are wholly blue. Entertainment is blue. Hollywood is blue. It just seems to me that woke culture has won. That they completely swept away the idea of fairness.
Listen, I believe that's only temporary, Hugh. Now, listen, we're never going to get as conservatives a fair shake from the mainstream media. We're just not. And Democrats are going to get kid glove treatment from the media. That's always been the case. But I think it's folks like you and I who have to get on those places and push back. I don't think it's good enough just to go on conservative media outlets and speak to the converted. We've got to get out there and speak to the people who need to be converted. And so that's why, I'm with ABC. It's not because I necessarily agree with all the editorial content. I don't. But what I will say to you is I think my presence on that show is important to have this point of view expressed.
Oh, it is. And George gives you a chance. George gives you a shot, and I appreciate that George gives you a shot. Chuck gives me a shot when I'm on. Let me ask you now about taxes, Governor, because I had a couple of journalists on last night. I don't want to embarrass them by repeating it. I asked them if they knew what changing the stepped-up basis rule meant, and none of them understood. They didn't know what it meant. And I think if they change stepped-up basis in the United States, they will be screwing millions of Americans who have no idea that it's coming. Do you think that has a prayer of occurring?
I would normally say no, Hugh, but I will tell you, these folks in the Congress right now and at the White House seem intent on using the time they have, which I believe they'll only be in control in the way they are now until the midterms in 2022. But they're going to use these 2 years to try to get their entire agenda put through. They're making Barack Obama look timid.
Yep.
I mean, with what they're trying to do. And I think you've been great on the stepped-up basis argument because it is the greatest creator of middle-class affluence that the world has ever seen. And they're going to try to take that away. And I think it's outrageous, and they try to characterize these people as rich. In a place like New Jersey, where the property values are so high, what they're going to do to the children and grandchildren of people who worked hard in the middle class, bought a home, developed some affluence, and they're going to take it away from them. It's outrageous, and I think people all across the middle class in this country have to understand this is the tax that's coming for them and for their children.
Now, in New Jersey is a perfect example. I've never lived there, but my assumption is because it's close to New York City Metro or it's close to Philadelphia Metro, that they've had housing inflation that's been significant over 30 years. But the stepped-up basis rule would then tax that asset at its value at the date of death as opposed to changing the value. How many millions of New Jerseyans would get hit with a tax bill they didn't see coming?
Everybody who owns a home. Everybody, because you're exactly right about what happens, except in the deepest of recessions, Hugh. The housing values here consistently go up because of our, Benjamin Franklin used to call us a keg tapped at two ends in Philadelphia and New York.
I didn't know that.
We're in those metropolitan areas, our home values go up. And since the COVID crisis, home values have gone up significantly with people wanting to leave metropolitan areas like New York and Philly and come out to the New Jersey suburbs where they felt safer. So it is in New Jersey, this will be a tax of untold billions.
All right, last question, Governor. You're going to have a bunch of corporations get hit with a 21 to a 28% tax hike, and most Americans don't really sympathize with corporations. Is that good or bad for America?
It's bad for America because it's going to cost jobs. Listen, these corporations will continue to run themselves for the benefit of their shareholders predominantly because that's their responsibility. And so when they get an increase like that, a 1/3 increase in their tax rate, you know what they're going to do here? They're going to hire fewer people. They're going to spend less money, both on goods and services and philanthropically. that all is going to hurt the American people. We've seen this movie before. I don't understand why we continue to repeat it, why we dare listen to ridiculous people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and that crew who don't know anything about wealth creation, only know about wealth consumption.
Now, last question quickly, Governor. Do you think Coke and Delta acted in the best interest of their shareholders when they joined in the Georgia boycott?
No.
Neither do I. I wish someone would sue him. Christie, always good to talk to you. I know you're headed for the airport. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Hugh. Have a great day.
Sorry about those Mets being on the cover of SI. That's the end of their season. People know that know baseball. When you put the Mets on the cover, I'm holding it up if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, they're doomed. Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for joining me on this Monday. It's my last week inside California's Golden State borders, going back to the Beltway on Saturday, joined by Republican Study Committee Chairman Representative Jim Banks of the great state of Indiana. Good morning, Representative Banks. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Hugh. Good to be with you.
Hey, thank you for joining me early. I know this doesn't matter much to Indiana because you don't have professional sports there or a football program or anything like that. But Major League Baseball yanked the All-Star game in a woke moment of coercion on America, and it's ridiculous. Delta's become the Democratic Party airline. Coca-Cola is the official soft drink of the Democratic Party. What did you make of last week?
Well, Hugh, Indiana's a basketball state, as you know, but there's nothing that's more inherent to America than America's pastime, and that's baseball. And Hoosiers are paying attention to what's going on in Georgia. In Indiana, as you know, I mean, we have Cubs fans, we have Cards fans, we have Reds fans, we even have a very few Indians fans in the Hoosier state, Hugh. But what's going on with Major League Baseball is a travesty. The only way to right it, to correct it at this point, would be for Commissioner Manfred to resign. He's made a mockery of America's pastime, and the only way to bring it back as America's sport, I believe, is a pretty big transformation and a change in leadership at this point. It's an embarrassment.
They should put the All-Star game back. Delta and Coke should apologize. Do you think? I just had Christie on, and he just gave a flat no. Do you think Delta and Coca-Cola served their shareholders well last week?
Well, obviously not, and we'll see how this plays out. But a clear overreach by corporate America in this case, probably a sign of much more to come, something that's been bubbling up for a while. Donald Trump, in so many ways, Hughes sort of held it off. Like he gave the Heisman to corporate America and the woke culture for 4 years and held it off. And now with him gone, real America, I mean, Hoosiers every day everywhere I go, Hugh, in my district, this is what my constituents want to talk about. My voters want to talk about how all this stuff is in your face every single day. They're sick and tired of corporate America calling normal people that don't live, breathe, and sleep and talk politics every day like you and I do. They're sick of this stuff being in their face every day, being told they're racist because they believe in core American principles. And when corporate America, Coca-Cola, starts down that track, it's going to hit their bottom line.
Now, you're on armed services, and you know about the Navy, Representative Banks. I had Ray Mabus, the former Secretary of the Navy, call me a racist this weekend because I believe in the Georgia law. I believe in increasing voter security. It is a very balanced set of measures that expand voting access and at the same time insist on ID for absentee. Do you think voter security is voting suppression or racist?
Well, first of all, it reminds me of the slogan in his state when he was governor. There were bumper stickers that said, "Save us from Mabus." And so for him to call you names to you, I would wear it as a badge of honor. He's one of the worst Navy secretaries that we ever had. But no, there's nothing racist about voter identification. The question that I have yet to hear anyone in the mainstream media ask any Democrat at all is to explain it. Explain to us how voter identification is racist, because no one's done that, because once they do, you'll realize how ridiculous this notion is when any Democrat or anyone on the left tries to explain it. At this point, it's just hyperbole. It's the constant barrage of attack. When Democrats can't win, when those on the left can't win an argument, they resort to using names and hyperbole instead. But if you force them to explain it, they're not going to be able to explain it. They're going to sound ridiculous trying to explain how that's the case.
No, I think the RSC and the conference should fight hard on this line. I don't think they can be bullied anymore by corporate and by woke up, corporate. Woke is broke, I believe, is what you tweeted out. And I agree with you. People should not patronize woke companies. If they're going to punish us, they're going to coerce us. I'll drink Pepsi. I will fly anybody but Delta unless I absolutely have to. And I'm not spending any money on a baseball game this year.
Yeah, amen to that. And let me tell you, Hugh, I didn't know much about Governor Kemp before these last couple of weeks, other than the fallout from the November election. But I have become a big fan. And there's something going on in the Republican Party right now where you're seeing backbone rise to the surface in a way. Governor Kemp is at the top of my list. I don't know why people aren't talking about this guy running for president. I've never met him. I don't know him. But that's the kind of backbone that resonates nationwide when a governor stands up and says, we are not going to take it. The woke left, the corporate America, all this backlash. He said corporate America might be afraid of the woke culture on the left, but I am not afraid, and I will not back down. And in that moment, I could feel a shift in the Republican Party. If more governors act like Governor Kemp does, and we push back on this stuff, America is going to be better off for it.
And I think Governor Abbott's going to do the same. CNN is calling the new Texas law voter suppression. Abbott will not have anything of that. Let me turn to taxes, Congressman Banks, because that's originally one. I'm so concerned about stepped-up basis. I think, as Governor Christie just said, it's going to hit millions of New Jerseyans. I don't know if it's going to hit Indianapolis, or it's certainly going to hit people in Chicago and Cleveland and places like that. Do you think it has a prayer? Are they really going to get rid of stepped-up basis?
Well, I think anything is a prayer in this Congress, unfortunately. But let me tell you who this hurts more than anybody else. It's Main Street America. I serve a rural district in Northeast Indiana. A lot of agriculture in my district. We're still sort of largely, a lot of small towns that are immune from the pressure from corporate America with family-owned businesses. This step-up basis reform crap in this Van Hollen bill that's endorsed by that President Biden campaigned on, Hugh, means that the family farm is going to be hit more than anywhere else.
Yep.
The small downtown mom-and-pop hardware store, the businesses that line your Main Street. This bill is good for Wall Street. It's bad for small-town America like my hometown that I'm sitting in right now, where when that family business is passed on from one generation to the next, that inheritance isn't liquid. It's made up in property and assets, and it means that in this reform that you're going to have to sell the family business to pay the inheritance tax, and that's a shame. That's going to kill off more small towns more than they've already been killed off by the Amazons and the Walmarts and the big retailers, the big corporations in America over the last couple of generations.
Every car wash, every dry cleaner, and everyone who thinks grandma's home's going to get sold and distributed to the grandkids, it's going to go to the government. What about the corporate tax hikes? I mean, they want to tax everything, and it's going to destroy a fragile economy.
Yeah, at Republican Study Committee, by the way, we're the largest conservative caucus on Capitol Hill, 152 of us, and we spent a lot of time digging into legislation and language, and we're really focused on the policy. And what we've determined from this Biden tax hike is that essentially all of the tax hikes in the bill, from the corporate tax to the inheritance tax, everything in this bill is going to end up falling on workers and the middle class in America. And that's why when you say raising corporate tax rates, well, that might sound popular to you. Those tax hikes just end up landing on the consumer. They land on the worker, who's going to be most affected. It kind of reminds me of the old saying, don't tax you, don't tax me, tax that man right over there under the tree. I mean, that's what this is. This is a typical left-wing populist. It sounds good, but at the end of the day, it's going to be America's middle class, America's hardworking men and women who are going to feel the brunt of raising the corporate tax rates higher than what communist China's corporate tax rate is. By the way, the average European corporate tax rates are less than 20%. We're still above that at where we ended up in 2017, and raising our corporate tax rates to 28% is going to put us above most of the rest of the world, including communist China, and make it a lot harder for us to compete with China in the long term.
And those companies will simply begin to accumulate money abroad as they did the last time. Last question, Congressman Jim Banks. Tim Ryan's a friend of mine. We went to the same high school. He's a sort of moderate, normal Democrat. He wants to run for Senate. Does he realize he's going to get killed if this tax bill comes through? Have you talked to the moderate Democrats about how crazy this is and they don't have to go along with Nancy Pelosi's march off the left cliff?
Yeah, I've got a few friends that sort of fall in that camp, and you can see the shell shock in their face. This is sort of the first time you're seeing sort of dissension in the Democrat ranks. They've been united the first few months, but you can tell that they're worried about this. They're worried about where the radical left, the AOCs and their party are taking them when it comes to the Green New Deal being a major focus of this so-called tax and infrastructure deal. So, yeah, I like Tim Ryan, too, and some of these other guys. You can just tell it, and they don't have to say it out loud. You can tell it in their face that they're worried about the cliff that their party is taking them over at the moment.
Jim Banks of Indiana, good to talk to you, Congressman. Keep coming back, and someday there'll be Big Ten football in Indiana and Purdue. One of these days there will be. Good to talk to you, Congressman. I'm going right back, America, 1-800-520-1234, connection to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. 33 minutes after the hour. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by Josh Mandel, former treasurer in the state of Ohio, former state representative there. He's in the hunt for the United States Senate seat again. Longtime friend of mine and of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Hi, Josh. Welcome back to the program.
Hey, Hugh. Always good to be on.
Hey, Josh, you are a declared candidate for Senate. Am I correct?
You are correct. JoshMandel.com.
Okay, now I have had Jane Timken on. I've had J.D. Vance on. Is there any other person declared besides you three yet?
The only two that have declared are Jane and me. But there's some other people get in. I think there's a couple congressmen that'll probably run. There's an auto dealer. There's an investment banker. So it'll be a relatively crowded field, I think.
Now, I know President Trump, or I know it has been reported that President Trump had a meeting. Who was at that meeting, and did you guys really do an apprentice style, go around the room and tell him why you should be senator?
It was Jane was there, I was there, Bernie Marino's an auto dealer was there, and Mike Gibbons, who's an investment banker, were there. We're all friendly with each other, and so it was cordial. And I thought the president was great, and I'd be honored to earn his support.
Has he made his decision yet?
Not that I know of, but I'm doing everything I can to earn his endorsement. I mean, I'm a Trump America First conservative. I was the first statewide official in Ohio to endorse President Trump. When a lot of the more squishy establishment Republicans here were still clinging on the K6 presidential bid to the bitter end, I was first to jump in with Trump and was proud to do it. He was great for the people of Ohio, as you know, from where your backyard, like that area especially.
Trumbull County is Trump County. Yeah, it's Trump country. Yeah, absolutely.
It is, and that area in the Mahoning Valley and the Youngstown area, they didn't do well under Obama, but they did really well under Trump. And not just Republicans. I mean, one of the great things about Trump is, and the liberals don't like to hear this, Hugh, but if you look at the jobs numbers and income numbers among black people in Ohio, they did great under President Trump, and I think it's something we should lead on, because those Trump policies were good for the 75 million who voted for him, but it was also good for folks who didn't vote for him. And if you look at, a lot of the African-American population, especially there in the Youngstown area and Cleveland, Toledo, Akron, Canton, other parts of the country, we need to lead on that. Like, we need to lead on the fact that Trump's policies were good for jobs, and the Democratic Party takes for granted the African-American community and really sticks it to them over and over again.
Yeah, deregulation plus tax cuts equal full employment. I don't know if Democrats will ever figure that out. What'd you make of Major League Baseball's decision to boycott Atlanta and pull the All-Star game, Josh Mandel? It has me. I'm not going to buy an Indians ticket this year. No Indians merch for me. I'm not going to support woke capitalism.
I won't support woke capitalism either. I read your column this morning and thought it was spot on, where you were talking about the Three Musketeers with Major League Baseball and Delta and Coca-Cola. The thing that really sang to me in your column was the fact that, you talked about to buy a beer at a Braves game or any Major League Baseball game, you have to show your ID. To get on a Delta flight, you got to show your ID. But somehow, these, woke corporations and radical leftists, they don't want to require Americans to show an ID to vote. I mean, it's just insane. It's total hypocrisy. And the other part of it, Hugh, that just really eats at me is the support, from Major League Baseball now, and then obviously we know what's going on with the NBA, who's even worse, of the CCP, of the Communist Party in China. I mean, listen, LeBron James here from our backyard, he calls himself King James. I call him King Hypocrite. And this guy, all he cares about is the almighty dollar. Back here he talks about social justice this and social justice that. And then when it comes to human rights in China, where they have 1 million people in concentration camps, and if you speak bad about the government, they disappear you. He's got no problem with that over there, because he sells a lot of sneakers.
And he's got a movie, Space Jam, coming out.
Right.
He needs Chinese rear ends and seats, and he needs the Chinese Communist Party to let him show his movie. LeBron, I've always admired his willingness to speak out. I have nothing against athletes speaking out, but they ought to take questions about their ties to the CCP. Josh, I want to talk to you about Facebook, because you've had collisions with Twitter in the past. You've got one with Facebook right now. What is going on?
Yeah, I got booted from Facebook over the weekend for having the audacity to ask them a question. And the question I asked was in regard to this Capitol cop killer. This guy, his name is, he called himself Noah X, because he's a follower of the bigot Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. So he calls himself Noah X, and he goes and kills a police officer in the nation's capital. And so I asked the question of Facebook, and I asked it on Facebook. I asked, why did Facebook delete the profile of the Nation of Islam cop killer, Noah X? Pretty legitimate question, and I asked it in response to a journalist's post on it, who uncovered that they deleted the profile. And instead of answering my question, Hugh, they suspended my account.
Wow.
Think about that. Think about that. For having the audacity to ask a question. Last time I checked, we're living in the United States, not in North Korea. We're allowed to ask questions, especially of companies, and they kicked me off their platform for having the audacity to ask a question. And
are you back on yet?
Oh yeah. So listen, this is where it gets worse. So I contacted someone I know there. He's a Marine vet. He's a really good guy. I've known him for a long time, and I basically said hey, this is messed up. This is censorship. This is silencing. To his credit, and to their credit, he sent me back a message and said, quote, "Thanks for flagging this to us. It was an enforcement error that shouldn't have happened. We've restored the post and lifted the limitations on the page." Now, Hugh, I want you to think about that. I had a relationship with a Marine buddy of mine who works there and was able to, complain to him, and he brought it to their attention, and they fixed it. But imagine if you're Joe or Jane Sixpack in Trumbull County, Ohio, or in Dayton, Ohio, or in Toledo, Ohio, and you don't know someone who works there, and you don't have a Marine buddy who works there. You're just out of luck. This is happening every day to conservatives, and all these quote unquote enforcement errors. It's highly coincidental and suspicious that the enforcement errors only happen to conservatives.
Yep, that is. I know Mark Z a little bit, and I know he didn't make that decision, nor would he approve of that decision. But they've got kids working the censorship lines who make terrible decision after terrible decision, and they all go in the same direction. That's the problem, is that there is systemic left-wing bias in big tech, and they hate to admit it. But it's just like the bias in Major League Baseball, the bias in Delta, the bias in Coca-Cola, the bias in CNN. Systemic bias. Has your campaign been fairly covered? I'd love to come back to this with candidates. Do you think they are doing a fair job of covering your campaign?
You mean Facebook?
No, everyone. The Cleveland Plain Dealer, Akron Beacon Journal, everyone.
So the Cleveland Plain Dealer, they won't even cover me anymore. They totally canceled me. They said because they believe that they're the arbiters of truth instead of reporting the facts, that they won't even cover me because they disagree with some things I said, because I I came out against some of the mask mandates and said, hey, this is going too far. The big-handed government and all the shutdowns are screwing the small mom-and-pop businesses. And I put some stuff out about that, and they disagreed with it. So I was texting with one of the reporters at the Plain Dealer, and I said, hey, I understand you disagree. Why don't we do a counterpoint columns? You write one, I write one on the shutdowns and the masks and all that. And she says, yeah, it's a great idea. I'd love to do it. So to her credit, she says yes. She says, let me run up the flagpole. Not only does the editor reject it, Hugh, but then the editor writes a column that they're not even going to cover me anymore because they disagree with my position. I mean, these liberals are so afraid of conservative thought. They're so afraid of intellectual debate that they just cancel us conservatives. And listen, I wear it as a badge of honor. I've been canceled by the Cleveland Plain Dealer. I've been canceled by Twitter. I've been canceled by Facebook. As one of my supporters texted me yesterday, that's how you know you're hovering over the target when they come after you like that.
Oh, yeah, the Washington Post column I wrote on Major League Baseball got 6,000 comments at the Post. I don't read comments. I just know that those are the crazy left-wingers who are upset. So I believe in pushing back. I want to go back to Major League Baseball for a moment, Josh. You're a Cleveland guy. You know how important the Indians are. I did not object to their changing the franchise name. I did not object to people kneeling at the games. That's their Free Amendment right. But when Major League Baseball takes this action, or Delta, or Coca-Cola, you are a lawyer. Are they serving their shareholder interests?
I do not believe they're serving their shareholder interests. I think it turns into like they're sheeple. You know, it turns into this groupthink, and the AOCs of the world and the Elon Omars of the world and the Pelosi's of the world, they like build momentum behind these things, and then the leftist sheep just get behind it and they don't think. It's just like it's whatever the head sheep have to say, the rest of the sheep just get behind. And at the end of the day, like, this will have negative reverberations throughout the country. And you know who gets screwed is the single black mom in inner city Cleveland or inner city Atlanta who is working there at the stadium to make some extra money. And now there's not going to be as many butts in the seats to buy peanuts or buy beer, buy hot dog. At the end of the day, that's who really gets screwed. Yep. And the Democratic Party doesn't want to acknowledge that.
And the Braves came out and they said just that. So, Josh, I'm going to come to town, WHK. We're going to have debates. I hope you will join us, and Jane and JD, and if Steve Stivers gets in. I can't imagine a congressman's going to run against you three. I mean, really, do you think a congressman's going to run against you three? That's nuts.
I have no idea. I haven't talked to either the congressman, but he's thinking about it, and there's a congressman Dayton thinking about it as well. So my feeling is, like, the more the merrier. You know, I'm the Trump warrior. I'm the constitutional conservative. I was standing up against John Kasich and the Republican establishment before it was cool. I was behind Trump before it was cool. And listen, for any of your listeners who are pro-Trump, anti-establishment, and want a new generation of senators in Washington who are willing to take on the swamp and blow up the swamp, I'd be honored to earn their support, and they could visit me at joshmandel.com.
joshmandel.com. Good to talk to you again, Josh Shadad. He's a Marine. I always like to bring that up. And a graduate of The Ohio State University. There are 2 Marines and 2 graduates of The Ohio State University in the race this year, so it's going to be very complicated for Marines and Buckeyes. But thank you, Josh.